Live, it's getting hot right here on the bench today. My goodness, Kikuyu Member of Parliament Kimani Ichung'wah, he's taking no prisoners, as is Nyeri Town Member of Parliament Ngunjiri Wambua. Gentlemen, we haven't even gotten to Sagana yet. We haven't even gotten to the invitation you guys are going to this weekend. But you wanted to make your point.
I did. And allow me to finish this, because somebody has just reminded me that when we were in Kennel, when these guys were in Kennel, there was this Senator Millie Omanga who on air actually said that this competition is between the rich and the poor. She said it there, and these guys were there and they did not correct her. I have heard the Deputy President in various fora talk about these families who think that the ones who own this country, who think that the only ones who can produce leaders. I have heard Ichung'wah right here explain to us what a dynasty is. That a dynasty is a family that rules, and you just asked him if your daughter decides to become a member of parliament, the people who will be seeing that will be saying she's running for member of parliament because her father was a member of parliament. Does that make her a dynasty? And this is the danger of this narrative. Despite the fact that he's trying to argue that the dynasty narrative is specific to families, we are in a second or third generation of leadership in this country, because independence was in 1963. We had the first generation of leaders, we had the second generation of leaders that are now fading out, and we are now getting to where the third generation of leaders. By the time we are getting to 200 years, for example, like America is, we are going to have many families who will have produced multiple members of family. Why? I do not believe, I heard him arguing that if his daughter wants to become member of parliament because his father was, she would be doing the wrong thing. You see, the reason I want to serve the people of Nyeri, because I watch my dad serving the people of Nyeri as a priest. Now, my daughters might decide they want to serve the people of Nyeri as a member of parliament or in some other role. The reason we bring up children, they learn from us. They want to be like us. If you are doing a good job, they want to be like you. Yeah. But you're telling them that, no, if your dad was a ruler, and we don't even actually have rulers here because everybody's elected. So if your dad was an elected leader, you cannot be an elected leader because that makes you a dynasty as a family.
Let me ask you.
And now, then they flip that back, and then they say that you who has not been elected are a hustler, and you need to stop that person from becoming a dynasty. How does that work?
Let me ask you.
This is a landowner.
Let me ask you a simple question. Does that mean I can't
huge
run?
Landowner.
You can't run. This is a huge landowner.
Is that what you're saying, Mheshimiwa?
And by the way, Jeff, when you go back into history, dynasties were landowners, huge landowners. This guy is a huge landowner.
So, there you go. So he's
a dynasty, but he's out here camouflaging himself, driving a big car, parking it on the side, then taking a wheelbarrow, and saying I'm a hustler. I mean,
well, I could say I'm a huge landowner because the average shareholding of land in Kikuyu is probably less than an acre.
And he has flats, and he has apartments.
And I have more than an acre.
All right.
And I wasn't born in a family where I had that as an entitlement. I have hustled my way to get to that.
Can we move on? Can we move on, guys?
I would be happy for us to move on.
Let me finish.
I get your point.
Let me finish that point.
Otherwise, you're not going to move.
I would want to see a country where every young person feels he has an equal opportunity, be it to grow economically or even in political leadership, irrespective of where they were born. Be it in a poor family, be it in a rich family, be it in a family where you have leadership, or
other leaders.
In families where they have never produced leaders. And that is all we have been saying.
No, that's not what you're saying.
The Hustler Nation narrative is about enterprise versus entitlement. Is about hard work and the dignity of work, not calling some other households takataka because you don't see them.
All right, I get your point. Let me ask you this now. Have you been invited to Sagana this week, and the president has called all Mount Kenya leaders?
Who is inviting people? I don't know. I've not been invited by anybody.
You haven't?
I have not been invited, Jeff, I can tell you that. I've just seen it in the news that there's a meeting. I think Ngunjiri was telling us here actually with you that there are invites, and he actually said I may not know. He actually said they are not invited to Karen. I don't know.
Mheshimiwa, are you invited?
Yes.
Are you invited?
First and foremost, I am looking forward to going to Sagana on Saturday. We are informed that the president is going to be hosting leaders from the region to discuss about BBI. I would assume that because Ichung'wah has already taken a position that he doesn't support BBI despite having read it. I don't think he'd be of value in Sagana, in my opinion, because we are going to actually have a conversation about how to explain BBI to Mount Kenya people. Ichung'wah belongs to a team that goes to Karen, and us guys never go to Karen. I mean, they go to Karen, they never invite us to Karen, which is also actually another property owned by the state, because it's the deputy president's residence, as we are going to the president's residence in Sagana. So they're different opposing teams. They have organized themselves, they have planned, they have anti-BBI narrative, they have an anti-BBI campaign that they have been pushing for quite a while. They have gotten new recruits like Kangata, for example. But one of the things I liked about Kangata was that he said that when he walked in Murang'a and he met 10 people, 2 of them supported BBI. And he thought that was a bad thing. Actually, thought that was a really, really good thing. Why? We haven't sold BBI in Mount Kenya. We haven't even distributed copies of the amendment in Mount Kenya. We've been waiting for the signatures to be authenticated, which happened this week. So now is when we are going to discuss how to actually go into the region and talk to people about BBI. But Kangata is confirming to us that even before we start, 20% of the region is behind us. That's a very good thing. So on Saturday, part of what we're going to be doing is having a conversation as leaders from the region who actually support the proposed amendment and talking about how are we going to go and deal with the propaganda and the lies these guys have been spreading about BBI in the ground, because they have been campaigning against BBI for 2 years, by the way. They started campaigning against BBI even before we knew what BBI was going to be like. So now they have had 2 years of an opportunity to just sell lies, give propaganda. We have to sit down as leaders, as responsible people who represent people who need to hear about this particular bill. I need to tell the people of Nyeri that you're going to, this bill proposes to move your money from 6 billion to 9 billion. Actually, it's to 13 billion shillings. This bill proposes to protect Udhaya and Teto and Mukureni that were going to be removed in 2022. This bill proposes to ensure that every member of the county assembly has got 22 million shillings to develop their ward. And I need to ask them, when you hear somebody telling you not to pass this particular bill, not to support this bill, he needs to tell you what their proposals are to compare with this one.
Before I go to him, isn't it a fear that Kieleweke, you're completely isolating all Tanga MPs?
Actually,
or
no.
Supposed MPs, you're isolating them completely?
No, we are not isolating them. They isolated themselves, they isolated us. Ishungu has never invited me to Karen. And he goes to Karen all the time.
Would you go if he invited you?
I mean, if he did, at least he needs to give me the opportunity to refuse. He's never even given me the opportunity to refuse.
Can
he invite me, then we see. But then also, and this is the point.
I was asking you the monologue.
Go ahead. Have your monologue.
Since we can have
yours.
No, I have no problem with discussion, so long as it's not on the merits of BBI, because I honestly, and I've said it publicly, I have no time for BBI.
Why?
When I listen to Kenyans, when I listen to the people I represent, they have far much more pressing priorities than BBI. When I listen to governors speaking about threatening to go to court to get the 17% that we appropriated to them in this financial year, that they are yet to get over 100 billion shillings so far and disbursed to county governments, then I have got to ask myself as an economist, we are talking about 15%, we are not able to afford it. We are promising 35% and all these other sweeties. Anyway, away from BBI, my concern, Jeff, is what Ngunjiri says, that if I invited him, first, I am not the current occupant of Karen, the Deputy President's office, official residence, and maybe if he invited you, I don't know whether he would go.
Please,
if the President invited me,
to say no.
If the President invited me, I have honored all invitations by the President, even some that he has said certain unpalatable things. But I have.
Would you go to Sagana if he invited you?
If he invited me, and he offered me the opportunity to tell him the truth as it is, in my view.
So you'd go on condition.
The only problem is that the last 2 Sagana meetings we've had, they've been a monologue, a chorus of praise singers and arranged people who are rejected in the last elections are the ones who are given opportunity to speak. We were not given opportunity to speak. They were the organizers of the last Sagana meeting. We didn't even have seats. We sat outside. But far from that, my main concern today, Jeff, BBI is not about Mount Kenya. BBI ought to be about Kenya.
It is.
President Uhuru Kenyatta was not elected as president of the Mount Kenya region. He was elected as president of the Republic of Kenya. I have had some discomfort to even listen to my president speak on vernacular, broadcast in vernacular to the nation when he is a sitting president of the Republic of Kenya. I never heard it from, let's forgive Jomo Kenyatta and Moi, because there was probably only KBC broadcasting in vernacular, but Mwai Kibaki had the opportunity to address the nation in vernacular, not broadcast, even in public forums. I never ever heard Mwai Kibaki, a true nationalist, utter a word in vernacular. In fact, I remember when the first time Mwai Kibaki either got a delegation or visited Nyeri and people asked him for money, he told them pesa niko mingi, ukitaka pesa iko kwa benki na serikali itaweka mikakati kuhakikisha pesa ziko. And for sure, certainly, Mwai Kibaki ensured that banks were knocking on our doors. They were putting tents to hawk loans outside our offices here and outside our homes. Today, those banks are auctioning our people. If I had the opportunity today to sit before His Excellency the President, I would beg him, Your Excellency, as you promised yesterday that you will roar like a lion in these 17 months, please roar like a lion in Zion. Take back the economy where Mwai Kibaki left this economy. Because those are the issues that I feel affect and afflict the people of Kenya. I would wish for an opportunity to remind the President that in 2018, I pleaded with him and asked him, Mr. President, please organize a workshop for members of parliament to be able to understand and internalize the Big Four agenda. Because I could sense as chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee that was likely resistance, especially of the housing agenda, an agenda that would have created millions of jobs to young hustler Kenyans. Those millions of jobs today, we are being asked today by the opposition, where are those jobs? But we left the Big Four and concentrated on two small agendas of a handshake and BBI. If I had been invited, Jeff, I would boldly face the President, because I respect the President. I value the time I spent campaigning for this president across the country. And that's why I get a little uncomfortable when he addresses the nation in vernacular. I get a little uncomfortable when I see the president reduce himself, climb down from being the president, a national leader, president of the Republic of Kenya, to become an ethnic leader in Mount Kenya and cobble together a few leaders from the Mount Kenya region, lock them up in Sagana to the exclusion of other leaders who Jeff, you do not want to hear the truth.
I think you're feeling a little left out there. You're feeling a little left out.
No, I'm just passionate, Jeff. I wish I had the opportunity, not on air as I'm doing now. I wish I had the opportunity.
But you still might.
Which camera do I ask the president?
Actually,
Mr. President, if you can invite me.
Which
camera, Jeff? Show me which camera.
Jeff,
maybe I could ask His Excellency the President, with all due respect, Your Excellency, sir, I would love to have an engagement with you on issues that affect and afflict the people of Kenya, right from the Big Four to the small two agenda.
Let me tell you. First and foremost, I do sympathize with Ishungwa, but he could actually give me notes. Give me notes. I assure him I will make sure that the president gets them. And he has had a long time to present. You know, this guy has been in parliament for 7, going to 8 years now.
8 years.
And he's had a long time. He's had a long time to articulate his issues. If he has never had an opportunity, if he's never had an opportunity to make a difference with the president so far, and then I don't think it's the president's fault. But then it's also important for me to make something very clear. I listened to Ishungwa speak about Big Four, and I tell myself, this guy hasn't read BBI for sure. He hasn't read BBI, because BBI I have read, he hasn't. Because if he had read it, he would actually understand how BBI is going to enable us, and actually fast track us to achieve some of the things we're talking about under Big Four. For example, when we talk about 15% being difficult to achieve, but 35% being hard. So he's asked a question: if we can't give 35, if you can't give 15, how do we give 35? Yeah. He's an accountant, and I'm actually ashamed to say that he's speaking out of ignorance. Because Jeff, we're not creating new money. If you have 100 shillings, and today I give you 15 bob, then tomorrow we agree, rather than keep 85 shillings, you'll keep 65. So what BBI is proposing to do is reduce national government expenditure to 65% of our budget, and move 35% of our budget, rather than 15%, which is what we move now, to the counties for local development. That is what this proposal by the BBI is saying. Okay. It is not developing new money. So this is why I'm saying he hasn't understood where BBI is coming from. Allow me. I'm a philosopher.
Now that's
vernacular. That's vernacular. And it's also important. It's also important for Ishungwa not to be apologetic about being a Kikuyu. All politics is local. Jeff. The reason Uhuru Kenyatta is president today is because he was able to showcase his leadership skills from Gatundu. moving up.
Jeff.
So allow me to finish this because he also had his 5 minutes. We are speaking about transferring, about allocating money. When we get every 100 shillings government gets, today we allocate 15% to counties, we keep 85% to national government. But BBI proposes to change that formula from 65% to national government, 35% going to county governments. Now, county governments are in charge of, example one, agriculture. They're in charge of agriculture. It's a devolved function. So if you're moving more money to county governments, you're actually moving more money to agriculture. Two, county governments are in charge of hospitals except level 6. So if you're moving more money to county governments, you're moving more money to healthcare. County governments are the ones, that is what Kenyans interact with as their first level of government. You're moving more money there. Ishungwa, now for example, let me just use his place, Kiambu. Kiambu currently gets 9 billion shillings from the national government. This BBI proposes to give Kiambu 18 billion shillings, right? This is money that is moving from 6,000 shillings per head out of the 2.4 million people in Kiambu to 13 or 12 to 13, 11,000 shillings per head, 12,000 shillings per head to every single person in Kiambu from national government. This is money that is going to help the 100,000 people who vote for Ishungwa in Kikuyu, and in Kikuyu constituency. So I keep asking myself, if you do not want the proposed amendment, Ishungwa, if you do not want the people of Kiambu to get 18 billion shillings into that county rather than 9, what do you want them to do? Okay, you've asked him the question. I
have a German neighbor, and I see the daughter texting my daughter and saying, "Guy."
It's carrying the dynasty, eh? Dynasty. He has a German neighbor. My friend, I don't even have German friends.
By the way, in between me and Jeff.
So you guys are dynasties. Essentially, I'm just in the wrong group. Just hanging out to the wrong people.
Let me say this. We are hustlers who are trying to make it in life.
Go on.
But I was saying Guy because I cannot believe that Ngunjiri, who has been to school and actually called me ignorant, and I have no problem with being ignorant because from your ignorance maybe you get to learn.
I've tried to teach you.
I'll just try and teach you one thing. One, your first story tonight in your news tonight was President Uhuru Kenyatta's Treasury's budget. And you call it what? The biggest ever budget or something.
Since independence.
In that budget, 3.02 trillion budget. Right. The projections of revenue collections are about 1.9. And it is projected revenues, not actual revenues. The most realistic actual revenues in this country is about 1.45 to 1.8 trillion. Out of about call it 1.5 trillion. Okay. Out of that 1.5 trillion, Jeff, 1 trillion shillings is going into debt repayment, even in that budget you are talking about. Facts, not propaganda. Out of the 1.5 revenues that you collect, if you were to work with the figures of this last budget, if you took 35%, it's about 560 billion shillings to counties. Plus the 1 trillion shillings in debt repayment, your 1.5 revenues is gone. You have not paid salaries. You have not paid for your pensions, interest and everything. What does that tell you? That you have to continue borrowing. What is the biggest concern that Kenyans, including you, Jeff, and I have? When I told you that Mwai Kibaki left us with an economy where banks were begging us to go and borrow from them, is because government stopped borrowing from the domestic market, from banks. What happened when government stopped borrowing from banks, or what happens when government stops borrowing from banks, is that banks, because they make money from the interest they earn from money they lend out, they come to you and me, we take that money, create jobs for millions of other hustlers, and the economy thrives. Today, we have a situation that I would only describe as real state capture. Capital owners are also influencing policy in government, Jeff.
But don't forget there was Corona for the last year or so, huh? Don't forget. You can't blame on the government.
Jeff, I'm
not defending anybody here.
I had been very excited when you told me you were inviting me here with Honorable Kanini Kega, the current chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, because at least we would engage at a level where he has similar information. Similar information to know that pre-COVID, Jeff, pre-COVID, before 2020 March, the first case of COVID, if you look at the budget policy statement report we did in Parliament, and he was party to passing it, we raised concerns regarding our public debt, regarding the realism of our revenue projections, and issues of the sustainability of our economic growth. And we proposed and suggested to the National Treasury, but we may need to rejig our economy and probably rethink whether we need to start negotiations. In fact, that was 2019 supplementary, second supplementary of 2019. No, first supplementary of 2019 towards the end of 2019. We told them as a Budget and Appropriations Committee that it is probably time the government started thinking about restructuring our debt, because it was very soon it was going to become unmanageable and unsustainable. Therefore, I was saying it's interesting to be called ignorant, and you tell me that I have a basket where I'm only able to raise 1.5 trillion shillings. If I pay my debt of 1 trillion shillings, I pay CFS about 500, the Consolidated Fund Services about 500 billion shillings. I pay counties 300 billion shillings. I am borrowing. I do development work. I have to borrow. If you honestly tell me that we don't need a conversation around that, I think we're just being, I don't know whether we're being ignorant. Today, Jeff, we have just been told by World Bank, we are back to the IMF World Bank begging mode, where we had gotten out of. We are there, World Bank and G20 countries are giving us a relief of about 39 billion shillings in repayment between now and June. That money, if we get the other G20 countries to also give us the same package, we'll probably end up saving probably about 70 to 80 billion shillings. That money, Jeff, has already been spent. It is not a saving we're going to be making. And he will see it once we reopen Parliament, because I am privy to some of the letters that have come to Parliament of money that has already been spent outside the budget. Therefore, we need a more robust discussion about the economy.
I agree.
That's why I told you I would passionately, because I am passionate about the economy, because I believed and I came into politics out of economics for me. For me, it all boils down to the economy, is what I had, I think is Isaac Moore, I had say here or somewhere else, that somebody, one of the American presidents once said, it's Bill Clinton who said it's the economy stupid.
Yeah? The economy.
And it is real for all economies across the world.
Okay.
It is the economy stupid, not BBI.
I want to explain something.
Do it real quick, because we have to wind up now. So
okay, first and foremost, BBI is actually dealing with the economy in nearly every aspect of what it's doing. First and foremost, it's trying to create an environment where you can actually have a situation where we're not destabilizing the economy because of politics. That's the first thing. Second thing, it's redistributing the money that we're getting and trying to take as much as possible to Mashinani, to the people that he's calling hustlers. But he's trying to stop that.
I like
the
that.
third thing, and that's what BBI is doing. That's what I'm telling him. He hasn't read it. The third thing that BBI is doing is actually creating a situation where we have one man, one vote, one shilling that we've always talked about, where we are trying to equalize the vote and ensuring that representation is the same. Roiro stops having one member of parliament with 200,000 people, equal to, for example, Balambala, that has one member of parliament with 50,000 people, by making sure that Roiro gets another 2 constituencies, gets voice, gets 300 million. That is what BBI is trying to do.
Doesn't Central benefit the most from all this?
Yes, it does. Mount Kenya region, Central gets 17 new constituencies to equalize the representation. And the thing he keeps talking about cost. The cost of, why don't we talk about reducing our salaries as members of parliament? If the issue is about how much money
is that proposal in the BBI?
You get what I'm saying? But he can propose that.
To reduce
because
salaries?
Even the salaries we have are not in the BBI, are not in the constitution. You see, we can actually have a conversation. Let me finish. We need to have a debate about our economy. Because you see, if we are saying that having an extra 70 members of parliament is too expensive, then why don't we say, because even the salaries we have right now are not in the constitution, right? Yeah. Then why don't we say that this is what we pay you guys? Even if you increase your salary, even if you increase your representation, do not go beyond this budget.
Yeah, but you'd never agree to that.
Let me finish the final point I needed to make in regards to the issue about the economy. And why I said that my friend is speaking from the ignorance of the BBI and what is in the BBI. If we speak, yes, you're actually ignorant on BBI.
But if I speak, you a bit of economics.
And that economics is in that document. I wish they could read it.
There's no economics.
Because you see, if you are speaking about taking money to the grassroots, you are speaking about rejuvenating the grassroots. He's talked very elaborately about Mwai Kibaki, who came from near our village in Udaya, and how when he was president, banks were lending us money. right? So there's nothing wrong with loans, which he keeps fighting with.
Jeff,
you see,
or being in debt.
being in debt. Because let me tell you something. Let me tell you, Jeff. Let me tell you, Jeff, as I finish.
Will you allow me to finish?
This, I'm having my moment. I'm having my 2 cents. He is a very wealthy young man, right? The reason I can tell you he hasn't made that money from his salary. He's gone to banks. He's borrowed money from banks. He services loans right now. That is why he's able to keep growing his wealth. We are a country that is trying to grow our economy. We are going to have to get help from outside. And that is what loans are. They're help from outside to help us expand our economy as long as we're serving them. We have not been unable to pay debt, and, except for now when we are renegotiating it, because we have come from COVID. And these reliefs that have been given across the world to third world countries.
All right, you get the point.
Jeff,
talk to me.
Let me tell you. I was saying there's something I like because he said BBI, he keeps telling me it's about dealing with the software so that
you need to read it.
People stop fighting. I only wish the proponents were not moving around this town with people carrying rungus and machetes and iron mercenaries.
Hang out with me.
Hang out with me. Then
hang out with me. Me, I'm not doing that.
I'll be okay. 2, Jeff, let me tell you, there's absolutely nothing wrong with borrowing, but you must do so in a responsible manner. And make sure that what you borrow, you put into productive use. If I borrow money today to hire another 200 members of parliament, I am being irresponsible as a leader. If I borrowed money to invest in the productive sectors of our economy that will create jobs and create more wealth for this country, I am being a true leader. I told you, there's a conflict of interest in government today, and I say this again without flinching an eyelid. When I refer to the Mwai Kibaki era, I do it with pride, because Kenyans appreciate where we came from. I was in business, that's why how I became a landowner with more than an acre of land in Kikuyu during the Mwai Kibaki time, because I could hustle and I grew from a very small business person to a place where I could actually employ other people. Why? Because I was offered opportunities by banks. Today, we are, as government, and I say us here included, as government, we are going back. If you read that, the budget proposals that are there, the biggest element in that borrowing docket is domestic borrowing. Domestic borrowing is where you go and government walks to the bank and borrows from the bank. Then you and me will not borrow. Our economy will not grow that way. Number 2, you're saying you have not defaulted. An act of default in a loan, Jeff, when you don't pay your M-Shwari or Fuliza loan, I think they send you a text immediately when it's due. Same thing with banks. Same thing with your debtors. I don't know if you know that already we have started defaulting. We have had to...
You had Corona.
Let me finish. I don't know if you know, let me inform you. Pension funds, interest on government securities, we have had to defy it. That is an act of default. Therefore, when we talk about these things, Jeff, this now is not propaganda, is not politics, it is economics. And that is why I told you, for me, it is the economy stupid.
And the reality, Jeff,
wait. There's some tweets we need to read, and then we need to wind up. Either we'll spend the night, or else we'll spend the night here. And you guys don't want that.
By the way.
Couple of tweets. Tony M. Mogira says, politicians are fond of bringing cover-up gimmicks and theatrics in the minds of Kenyans to draw attention away from the negative realities that are happening daily. Let's be vigilant. Remember, 2 billion is getting lost daily.
True.
Who's to blame?
2 billion is getting lost daily, and I've had people trying to explain that the president is doing that, and he said he's in charge. We lost 24 billion with Kimaria and Aro. That's an average of, for 1 year. That's an average of 2 billion shillings a month. That's actually what the president was talking about. 2 billion shillings got lost in Aro and Kimaria.
We lost.
Right? But then there's something I wanted to make. Jeff, this gentleman has been chairman of budget for 7 years.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
No.
Let me tell you. For what, 5 years?
No.
Chairman of budget.
Confusion.
Until 2019.
Until 2019.
Only for 2 years, 7 months. Then
so for those 2 years, 7 months, because the argument that is there
the truth
is
to power. They fired
Jeff,
me.
This guy's argument is that the second term of the president is where we are doing badly economically. That's when this guy was in charge of budget in parliament. If we're in a hole, he put us there.
Jeff,
yeah,
I can tell you.
Go on.
As I said, I was only chairman for 2 years and about 7 months.
For the 2 years, you said we made a mistake.
3 years, if I hadn't been fired for telling them the truth as it is. If we had continued with the trajectory we had started off in the first term, if we had focused on the Big 4 agenda, Jeff, focused on UHC, focused on housing, building 500,000 houses, Jeff, the jobs that would have created, how it would have spurred economic growth, Jeff, we would not be in the hole we are in today. We left that for some small two agendas called handshake, BBI.
Okay. Francis Mutegi says, very unfortunate, very unfortunate. Just listen to everyone and eventually make your choice. Heckling and violence is itself defeating. You gain nothing. Onanchi, tuchanuke.
Agreed.
Sure.
Okay, let's face it. Closing thoughts from both of you. We're split down the middle, you know that. You can tell.
It's very sad.
We are split down. We can't even agree on anything anymore.
No, we'll fix it.
Is it fixable? That's my question.
We'll fix it.
Mheshimiwa, you go first.
Split as a country?
As this country, yes. Right down the middle. It's
as a country, as a region.
Against you, it's this against that.
Yeah.
We're split.
And that tells you, Jeff, what I've always said, that BBI is not the solution. If BBI was uniting this country, it would not be splitting us right down the middle. If you ask me today, I will tell you again, it's the economy, stupid. Let us focus on what will bring us together. If you, me, and everybody else out there is okay, you have a shilling in your pocket, Jeff, we have no reason to fight. If you think I have money and you do not have, you will come for my money.
That's the bottom line.
First and foremost, let's agree.
And also, if you think I have money because I'm in leadership.
There's nothing wrong with being split. It's a reason why you're split. America just came out of an election where they were split right in the middle. From the time we started multi-party elections, we've gone into elections and we've come out nearly half-half on one side. It is important to have competing thoughts. We can't all fit in the same boat. That's why I have no problem with the fact that Ishungwa doesn't support BBI and I support BBI, because we're able to interrogate it and Kenyans are able to hear and choose a side. So there's nothing wrong with not being able to agree. I think the problem becomes when we are splitting and then splitting violently. And I want to speak because I heard him saying that the president should not be speaking to us in Kikuyu. The president needs to speak to us in whatever language we're going to understand. Whatever language you're going to understand. Because ultimately, he is going to meet leaders from Mount Kenya. He's going to meet leaders from the coast. He's going to meet leaders from Nyanza.
How will understand
I have heard,
what he's saying?
He's going to meet them. Because we are a country that organizes ourselves like that. And he's going to meet every group and talk to them. I have listened to William Ruto speak to Kalenjins in Kalenjin, in a public forum. I have clips. We have clips where he's spoken to Kalenjins in Kalenjin. And you see,
Jeff.
No. I'm talking about things I have seen.
Me of using this.
Will you allow me? Will you allow me to finish? Because I have clips. I have clips. He's a deputy president.
Spoken about the deputy president.
And you are his defender.
Clips.
They are there. I'll show you.
When
the same way you said, even me.
Has been deputy president,
he has spoken in Kalenjin.
Now speaking in Kalenjin. Number two, I do not remember a time William Ruto has gathered people in Sugoi.
It's not this person versus that person.
So what I was going to say is this: we need to stop being apologetic about being able to sit down and talk about our interests. I have just explained to you that right now we have a situation where the Kalenjin community is saying you cannot have two bulls in the same crowd. Isaac Ruto has joined back William Ruto. Gideon Moi is being told to stop running for president so that William Ruto can run. This is a conversation happening within the Kalenjin community. But when we, as the Kikuyu community, for example, the Mount Kenya region, sit down and say, before you come and tell us you want to be our president, come and tell us what you're going to do for us. We have been told we have been tribal. This conversation, conversation must continue. And let me tell you something, Jeff. I really want to see the day I see Ishungwa giving a young person in Nandi a wheelbarrow, because I haven't seen him yet. He can't tell me the only hustlers we have in the country are in Mount Kenya.
Jeff, really? I wish we were doing that, me, Ngunjiri, and other Mount Kenya leaders, without His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya. Because
doing what?
Conversing in vernacular.
No, but he's one of us.
Let me finish. And discussing about those who are coming,
about our region,
what they would offer our region.
He's retiring.
Let me finish, Ngunjiri. As regional leaders at our level, okay.
All right,
at
gentlemen.
the level of a president who is elected by millions of Kenyans from across the board, speaking to them in vernacular, to me, doesn't go well.
Okay.
Maybe Moi Kibaki would have told you, or Daniel Moi, why they never did.
But you right here on the bench just said Guy Mwadani.
Yes.
We'll leave it at that.
And I told you our German neighbors text Guy.
Right.
And his principal always hosting delegations is Sugoi.
We're going to have to keep this debate going.
Let me tell you something about something I told him about BBI.
You know, we're winding up.
And I told him,
tell him afterwards.
We do BBI,
Tell him afterwards.
Create a kingdom, name Kimani Ichung'wa as a king.
All right, gentlemen.
I'll still oppose it.
I guess we'll have to keep this conversation going. But Kunjiri, you made a good good point. America's 244 years old.
Yes.
They just went through hell the last few weeks.
They have institutions. The president refused
because of statements like those that were said in Mululu.
Remember, despite those statements, despite the madness in the capital, America had a transition, and Trump is at home.
Like
can we do the same?
Uttered in Mululu.
Will we stay united?
That is what was banning America. We will ban Kenya if we continue uttering the kind of things
and calling people hustlers and dynasties. That's how we'll ban Kenya.
Goodness. Was the fire extinguisher? We need to...
He's getting ready to walk out. You remember?
Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Push it, single boss.
5, 4.
Let's pump some excitement into our afternoons.
1,
2.
push down.
With exercises to keep us healthy and active at home.
Come on, guys. 6. Simple exercise of warm-up.
Find some space and enjoy 30 minutes of workout.
Let's go.
1. Come on, kaza kabisa.
All here Monday to Friday at 4:15 p.m. and Saturdays at 8 a.m.
Amekuwa ni kama mtoto.
Ngweni nyoyo zenu ili tupate kujuana kindani.
Would you please